everyone, welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today we're doing another indie horror spotlight. I have with us today a horror director. He has a new movie that's in pre-production right now, doing some crowdfunding. It's going to be the sequel to Crappy Christmas Operation Christmas Child, which is a German horror anthology. It's coming from the December Christmas, and the new one is called Yuletide Suicide. I like the name, by the way. And I have Jurgen Kling. Jurgen, thank you for coming.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Good, man. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I have to just jump in. The anthology is called December, and my film is one segment of the December anthology.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're doing the sequel to our last claymation short.
So tell us a little bit about Yuletide Suicide and the anthology.
Okay, the anthology was called December. It was released in 2019. It's an independent horror anthology. It's the first horror Christmas calendar. So it contains 24 shorts from filmmakers all over the world, like Americans, Canadians, French directors, Mexican, South Korean, Serbian, and bunch of more. And so you can actually watch one horror short each day. So it acts like a Christmas calendar. It's more, the German Christmas calendars, they start December 1st and go to December 24th. But the horror anthology actually contains two more bonus shorts that run during the credits. So my film, Crappy Christmas Operation Christmas Child, was one segment of this December anthology film. And now we're in pre-production of the sequel to my claymation film, and it's called Yuletide Suicide. It's about kids being lonely during the Christmas time. He's suicidal and wants to kill himself, but he fails. And eventually he puts all his final hope into a letter to Santa. So this is like the plot that we were pitching and releasing so far. The rest is like secrets. So people want to be, surprised. There's the potential for twists and everything. So that's all we're going to reveal so far. Yeah.
Okay. So using claymation is an interesting route. Is that difficult? Does that take a little bit longer than during live action?
Yeah, of course. There's like two ways you can shoot animation. It's like either on we internally in the animation industry call it on once. This means you're shooting 24 frames for 1 second of film, just like 35 millimeter film works, like 24 frames per second. And if you want to reduce the workload, you're shooting on twos. This means you're shooting 2 frames of the same position. So the actual frame rate goes down to 12 frames per second. But my films are usually shot on ones, like mainly on ones. So this means for 1 second of film, I have to shoot like 24 frames, move the puppets 24 times for every second, and then expose 24 individual pictures. And so this takes very, very long. And we usually shoot about 5 seconds a day on one stage. And if I'm lucky, I can find a second animator so I can open a second stage or set. So we're going to have output of 10 seconds per day. So that's like the workload you can expect. So the shooting alone is going to take for this new film, which is about 12 to 15 minutes. So the shooting alone will take 8 months. If I find help, it might go down to 5 months.
Wow. Now, the actual clay figures, who came up with the design and actually created them?
I designed the figure, the most of the puppets, like the clay figures. The first Crappy Christmas film is from 1999. And that's when I created like the main protagonist kid, and then the other characters just came by. With every film, there's going to be a bunch of new characters, and this time we actually have like lots of new characters. and this is the first Crappy Christmas where we're actually gonna feature some dialogue. So far, it was like a silent film.
Hmm.
Now they're gonna have not a silent film. You hear them grunt or
Yeah.
do some noises, and so Kit still stays silent, but all the other characters have some dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's new.
Now, clay gore wise, what are we expecting? Are we expecting medium, high? Where are we going clay gore wise?
Clay Gore.
Yes.
Okay. So the last film was titled Operation Christmas Child.
Hmm.
This was very gory, and it was on a Christmas horror anthology. So it was tending more towards horror. So that was very gory. We also won 19 awards for Operation Christmas Child so far, and like 2 or 3 or 4 were like best gore. And the new one is more of a drama. It's like about mental health, and but of course there's gonna be some gore, but
Hmm.
it's not as focused on the horror than the last one.
Now, to focus on suicide, is that something personally that you have inspiration? Did you get inspiration from any family or friends who have been dealing with suicide? Where did you decide to go to the suicide route?
Yeah, I have a case in my friends, friend related, and I come from a rather small town, and like in our town, so many people, killed themselves.
Wow.
So was always like a topic. For example, when we were teens, we usually were camped outside in the forest. And
Hmm.
one day we couldn't because police cars were pulling up because somebody hanged himself in the forest.
Wow.
So the police caught us using open fire, which is not allowed in Germany. So like our whole trip canceled down, and or other people were standing in front of a train, and we lived by the railroad. So as kids, we always were exposed to all kind of information and happenings like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a tough topic, but it's a real topic to address. The suicide, I mean, worldwide is something that is definitely on an increase, especially with social media, bullying, and stuff like that. Is definitely on an increase. So I mean, it's definitely a tough topic to go into, especially when we're dealing with claymation and horror. But it's definitely fits in there. I mean, it's definitely a primal thing, and to definitely put that in the movie is definitely something new that you don't see most people doing.
It's always about the Werther effect.
Yes.
This is like people seeing suicide on TV, or back in the days really get in Werther, and then especially when suicide is being romanticized,
Hmm.
this you know brings the danger that people would just repeat what they see or get the wrong idea. And well, my film is actually the idea is to show that suicide is really a bad thing, but then it's claymation with cute characters. With
Hmm.
my last film, some audience confused the cute and funny look, or that they moved funny like cartoons do, but then having like a real dark topic, and they
Hmm.
confused it with me making fun of certain things.
Hmm.
But it's not. But still, it has some dark elements. And when you look at dark comedies, actually, what you see is usually not funny at all. It's just
Yeah.
the situation is so absurd, and sometimes people just laugh to cope with what they see.
It makes you
As
feel
a
uncomfortable.
so yeah, as a protective mechanism or whatever, protection mechanism. So this is yeah, it's quite a tough topic, but yeah, and it's going to be a very dark film. So it started this way. I was thinking about doing a sequel because the last film was already the third Crappy Christmas film. The first two were really old and really bad. They were like my beginner stuff.
Mhm.
And so I had several ideas for a sequel, and then Corona hit, and all my income possibility were like vanished because I'm doing workshops with people, like physically in the room, like, and so I had the possibility to apply for a stipend to get a grant,
Mhm.
and they asked for doing something new. Or let's say the situation was in other states in Germany, artists got help really quick and easy, and in my state we didn't get shit. So the only thing they offered was applying for a grant, and then you had to make a film or something, and it should be something new and something never been there and something super great, which of course is like totally easy to do.
Yeah.
So I applied for that grant, and my whole frustration and helplessness, and mental state, being like, oh, what should I do? Like being desperate, all flow into the Yuletide suicide topic. So it's really dark and desperate film. And yeah.
And it looks interesting to me. I mean, you sent me over a little bit of previews of it. It definitely looks like an interesting concept to mix, claymation and a hard, dark element to it. Is something definitely fresh and new. Now, I've interviewed several German filmmakers in the past, and as Americans, when it comes to German horror, we know there's a stereotype when it comes to German horror, and that's over the top gore, gritty, brutal. But I've talked to several German filmmakers recently, and they are trying to, and but they're not trying. They're making movies that are fitting. They're horror movies, but they're fitting out of that norm of that stereotypical German horror movie. Is that something that you're trying to do, or is it hard not to fall into the German stereotypical horror flick?
Okay, what is a German?
Over the top gore.
Okay, over the top. Oh, you mean that they mostly are like gore orientated,
Yes.
like the Olaf Ittenbach and
Yes. Like
yeah,
like
they're
in the
really
rest of
cool.
yeah, because in the rest of the world, when you hear German horror, you think over the top gore, and I mean that's a stereotype that's attached to it. But I've met and interviewed a couple of German filmmakers who are trying to make films that are not in that fit into that stereotype with less gore, more story, and more character driven. So the question was, is it hard to not fit into that German horror movie stereotype?
I think the reason there are so many over the top gory films is because the people that are doing them, they are into creating effects, so it's more effect driven. They're
Hmm.
not writers primarily, I think, but they're more like, oh, let's do this, see, hey, let's put explosive in this and let's try this. And so I think that's why maybe why they're coming this way. And well, I can't do live effects. I have to sculpt and like alternate little tiny things and shoot frames. So that's not my approach. And well, I mean, you need to find yourself a copy or online of the December film so you can watch my movie entirely. So you see, like, it's actually really over the top,
Hmm.
but more because it covers the taboo topic of clergy abuse. And I really love over the top American films like Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. It's
Hmm.
like one of my all-time favorites. And of course, it's also cartoony because actually it's kind of a cartoon.
It is.
But there are lots of cartoon elements. And I really like the mix of, I mean, they had a live action film and they added like slapstick cartoony action with gore, and I'm going the route that I'm using cartoony characters in a world that most people would associate with like children's TV or family-friendly entertainment. And I put those characters or throw those characters into real life tough events that we all have to face every day. Like now it's about suicide. Then the twist, there will be a twist, and there will be the topic racism, police violence.
Wow.
And in the last one, it was also commercial Christmas, and so it's like a bit capitalist or capitalism criticism,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the whole abuse topic,
Yeah.
and yeah, I always go over the top as well, but it's not just gore, it's more like topics, taboos, and it's quite controversial. So I'm not pointing a finger and see this is bad and this is a good way or whatever, but I just expose the audience to a bunch of situation, a bunch of topics that we have, in politics or social. So the idea is to keep those topics alive and not to be okay with it, with things that are running badly. Like, for example, the reason the kid in my movie is trying to commit suicide is because he can't afford a therapy, which is like a typical American problem.
Yeah.
Over here in Germany, we have a different healthcare system. So everybody is covered actually, but we don't have enough therapists. So whenever you're looking for a therapist and you're like in really have an emergency situation, then you can call. Of course, there are a bunch of emergency stations that can temporarily take care of you. But if you're really looking for a therapy, you're gonna end on waiting lists for a month.
Wow.
And especially when you're having for people being very depressive, you can't really get going. There's no motivation. It's really super hard to actually call a therapist, and then when you end up reaching one, then there's like, oh, I'm sorry, we're totally packed. There's no spaces available, stuff like that. So this is like the German problem with mental health. Americans more like the healthcare system. So it's like a privilege that you can actually afford therapy. So this is the stuff that's being covered in there as well.
Well, jumping on in America. So in America, yes, it is easy to get out there and get mental health. Mental health is a big thing here in this country, probably the whole world, like you said. But in this country, there's such a taboo on mental health, seeing a therapist, seeing a psychiatrist, especially in the African American community. Um, People have the means to go see psychiatrists and therapists, but they don't see it because it's a label that if you go see someone, there's something wrong with you. You're crazy. You're whatever. And so, like, I think over the years, it's becoming more okay and becoming more mainstream, but there's still in different demographic pockets and different race groups, mental health, going to get mental health, help is not something that's not done. And I mean, speaking as an African American, I can tell you, African American men do not go and see mental health in this country, and that's why a lot of us lead a lot of violence in this country because there's a taboo that mental health is bad in our community.
Yeah, same thing over here. It's still stigmatized, but maybe I think it's being covered in on media more and more, or the situation's actually getting better. So often the whole taboo or stigma is often in the head of the people that need help.
Yes.
They fear they're being stigmatized, but maybe, of course, some people still think that way, but I think it's getting better. Yeah.
It is. It definitely is. Now, so question: when did you first decide? You know what? I'm gonna give try claymation. What got you into claymation?
Oh, that's been years ago. When I was a kid, there was a TV show, and they explained how animation works. You know that it's single frame and whatever. So I was like, hey, that's cool. You could actually do that yourself.
Hmm.
But then that was back in Super 8 times when home movies was Super 8, and nobody in my family had a Super 8 camera. And even if somebody had, the learning curve going, on film is like super shallow. Like first you need to click on a full roll of film, and after that you're gonna send it away, wait forever till it comes back from the lab, and then just to see, okay, I did wrong, or that was not good. So
Yeah.
the learning curve is really, really long. And in 1999, actually the technique was there that you can shoot animation with video cameras by using a video capture card in a computer and grab a single frame out of the live stream of a camera. I mean, many video cameras back in the day had actually the advertised with single frame ability or whatever, but when you did
Hmm.
that, it took like 5 or 6 frames. So the animation was like really choppy and slow. And yeah, with a frame grabbing software, you can actually use that on a computer. And that was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. But that stuff was really expensive. Like years later, when DV came out, you got like a capture card for like $20, and I paid like $1,000, so to say, for just a video capture card. So I just wanted to try it and said, okay, now it's available. And I was kind of fed up with my old job working as a dental technician. So I just jumped in and bought me some equipment, a computer, the video capture card, a pack of clay, and used my family's old Hi8 camcorder. And then I just started, yeah. And a couple of months later, I was hired. I applied for an internship at a local animation studio, and I brought my tape, which my show reel, so to say, which featured the first crappy Christmas film already, and my very first thing called Rabies. It's also on my YouTube channel. And the studio boss watched it and said, "Okay, you can start working here next week." So I was hired as an animator. So I jumped in like really quickly. Uh, I became an animator because I knocked on the right door at the right time. So
I don't know how old you are, but I grew up in the '80s and the Super Nintendo era, and I watched a YouTube video a couple months back. It was the creation of there was a video game, it was a fighter video game. It's called Clay Fighters, and I don't know if you played it, but and I remember watching the video of how they made that video game with clay figures, and it seemed like so much work, and I was like, wow, that is. But the finished product is so amazing, but you don't realize how much work went into it to get that final product.
yeah, I think Clay Fighter was. I also grew up in the '80s.
Okay.
I didn't have a Nintendo. I had a Commodore C64 home computer,
Hmm.
um, and I think Clay Fighter is from the 16-bit era. So that was
Yes,
Genesis and Super Nintendo,
correct.
and also the Goro character from Mortal Kombat. He's also
Yes.
stop motion animated.
Hmm.
Yeah, like a puppet with like 4 arms, and yeah. Yeah, there's been a bunch. There's also more clay animated computer games. One is called the Skull Monkeys. It's on PS1, and the other is called the Neverhood
I've heard of
by
Skull Monkeys.
Doug Tenable. He's the guy who did Earthworm Jim. So
Yeah.
he's an animator. He does clay and 2D cell animation. And yeah, and they just recently made a bunch of stop motion games, like riddle games where you walk around and have to push cartons to create like stairs and climb up and stuff like that with
Hmm.
stop motion characters. Yeah, it's crazy. It's really cool.
So let's switch over to like Hollywood and big mainstream. They have went away from claymation and stop motion and I feel like they've gone more towards the CGI effects. Why do you think that happened? Is it because the CGI is takes less time? Is it less expensive?
No, it's not cheaper, it's not faster, it's just more flexible. For example, I mean, they took away from stop motion with Jurassic Park. Phil Tippett actually already built T-Rexes, and there's also, you can find all this stuff on YouTube. There's test footage about the T-Rex flipping over the Jeep and the T-Rex running, done in go motion. Go motion is where you have actually motors that move the puppets during exposure, so you get like in-camera motion blur. That's what's missing from stop motion usually. What makes the audience identify it as stop motion, that there's no motion blur. And yeah, so Jurassic Park, Tippett Studio was, working on the dinosaurs and everything, and then some person introduced Steven Spielberg to computer animation and went like, "Hey, see what we can do now," and he noticed it. So back in this area, they had a lot of real prop, like real animatronics and stuff, and CG, which is, I think, the best mix, where you have actually on-set puppetry plus CG. But what makes it more flexible, what makes CGI more flexible, is you can create a puppet, you can create an animation, and then at a certain camera angle, and then render the whole scene. And if the director says, "Yeah, it looks good, but the movement is a bit too fast," they can adjust that without doing the whole thing again. They can reposition the camera without somebody, spending weeks by pushing little arms and taking pictures. Because what we do is that you have to have people on set that make decisions and stay with these decisions, or it's becoming more expensive for the changes. So this is like the same thing, when the director starts, "Well, yeah, that's good," and you render things or you work on things, and then afterwards, "Yeah, but could the pants be red instead of blue?" It doesn't work in stop motion. And in CG, you can readjust all this stuff, so that what makes it like so flexible and versatile, whatever.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, all right, I'm going to shoot to two random questions. So, what is your favorite American horror film? Is it Evil Dead or?
There's so many of my favorite films. Always hard to say this is like the most favorite. I really like Return of the Living Dead, which I also did a homage in a recent music video I created. Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite. I really like the what's it called? The Dead Heat. It's like a really good one, a really funny one, underrated film I really like. And yeah, those are my two main favorite films. Yeah.
And what's one German horror movie that flies under the radar that most Americans don't know about?
Deathember. I have to say Deathember now because it's my film.
Yes.
It's actually a German production.
Yes.
It's hard to say because we don't have that many horror film productions, because the whole German film industry is based on state funding. There's almost no film that actually makes enough money to pay for itself.
Wow.
So it's all a big system of how to get to those funding pots that are filled with tax money. There's even so, for example, when Tarantino shoots the Inglourious Bastards in Germany, he gets tons of our tax money for coming to Germany shooting a film. Really? So there's even American productions getting paid with our cultural film fundings, and they either decide for film that are really artsy and have a high cultural value, or they're going to go with something that works in the theaters, and horror is like a very niche production. So it's really little chance to get any money from that. And all the films like that we mentioned before, like Olaf Ittenbach and many others, they just make their own films. So they are usually very low budget, and I don't think they ever got film fundings or get funded by those institutions. And I don't really know that many horror films from Germany. I think what's the guy called? Not Wolfgang Peterson, Roland Emmerich, the guy who shot Independence Day.
Yes.
When he started in Germany, he made all his film look like American productions. And I think one of his early ones was Hollywood Monster. That was quite, I haven't seen it for years. I've still been looking for it on DVD, but it's hard to find. And there was another one called Joey, which was kind of a rip-off of E.T., about a young kid has like a little red toy phone, and his dad died and he really misses him. And then eventually the phone starts to glow and rings, and I think it's his dad calling him, or he thinks it's his dad, but then there's some evil forces trying to lure him into something like that.
Oh, wow.
Like lure him into a trap or something. So this is all 80s stuff.
Okay.
This is deep 80s. And newer production, there's one called Sting with like giant bees, but I haven't seen it so far. There's so many on my to-watch list.
All right, so
but it's hard to tell because there's not a big scene.
Awesome. So where can everyone find you, Jürgen?
Oh, I'm on Instagram. My studio name is Weirdomation, like an artificial creation of mine, like weird and dough, like Play-Doh. And so it's called Weirdomation. It's actually, you know the term claymation?
Yes.
That's actually trademarked by Will Vinton, but everybody uses it as a common term for clay animation.
Yes.
So back in the 99, I made up my own, let's call it Weirdomation, because it's weird clay animation. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so that's my studio's name, Weirdomation or Weirdomation Films, and I'm on Instagram /Weirdomation or Weirdomation Films. I don't know. I'm on Facebook, and on YouTube I have a channel where there's a bunch of trailers, music videos, all kind of my work on there as well. Yeah.
Yes, definitely check out the YouTube, everyone. Definitely check out his YouTube. Listen, and by the way, you're also doing a crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Where can they donate to crowdfunding?
Oh, it's startnext.com/crappy-Christmas.
Okay. And that's going to be down in my description box too. So please click on that.
Yeah, it's a German crowdfunding platform, and the reason I chose it because there's a co-funding system. You can find actually co-funders. This usually are some cultural institutions. I applied at an institution, and the jury chose my project. And now for every €1 we're getting by a supporter, they add 50 cents on top. So
nice.
Right now we have like 3,800 euros, and over 1,000 euros we're getting from this co-funder.
So everybody, yes, please donate. Also, please check out December Christmas and look out for, we're looking at December next year for a release date for Yuletide Suicide.
On festivals, yeah.
Festivals. Okay, so definitely keep an eye out. My friend, it's been an absolute pleasure. I would love to have you back on once you have a finished product and we can talk all about it. But you're more than welcome anytime to come back on and promote.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.